What's a troll? Not a whole lot of questions I get more often than that. The 2-second answer is, I don't know. The 5-minute answer is something like this. This word is not used in any consistent way in Old Norse that gives you a nice specific answer, right? I can't make you a character sheet for what a troll is. I can't tell you how many hit points it has or what it looks like, because it's not one thing. This is a word that probably the closest comparandum in English is monster. Monster can mean so many things. I can be talking about Frankenstein's monster, I can be talking about a vampire, I can be talking about a sea serpent or Bigfoot. I can be talking about a person in the sense that we say, oh, that's a monster, right, of a Hitler or a Stalin or a Pol Pot figure, right, or a serial killer. I think troll is close to that. It's something monstrous that can embrace humanoid monstrous and it can embrace animal monstrous, as it clearly does in Volospal, where we hear that the mother of Fenrir's children, the wolves that'll swallow the moon and the sun, has these monstrous children eat trollshami, in a troll's shape, in a troll's skin. That shape is a wolf's, but that doesn't mean that everything called a troll is a wolf, because then there's also Ketil Saga Hunks, where Ketil, among other members of his family, have intimate relations with trolls, and they have children, and these are all clearly humanoid, and some of them are apparently pretty normal looking, normal enough looking that they have normal relations, right? And then some of them are described as being really horrible looking, like having, noses that reach from their head down to the sea when they're standing in shallow water. It's just vague as hell, right? So sometimes people want to look at like Ketil Saga Hunks and say, oh wow, some other kind of humanoid creature that's obviously different, but that they are having relations with. Is this a Neanderthal? It's part of what inspired, I think, Eaters of the Dead or the 13th Warrior. But no, they're not consistent about it any more, again, than we are with the term monster, right? If I tell you I'm afraid of monsters, I'm not telling you anything very specific. I'm just telling you I'm afraid of something that's very, very other, right? Trolls are very, very, very other. Now, I think an Old Norse speaker coming into our society today would see pretty much any of our monsters in TV, from Godzilla down to, again, like Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, whatever, and say, that's a troll. Would they call people that we call monsters trolls? I kind of think so, and here's part of my reasoning for that. I think Walter White is a troll in an Old Norse perspective, right? He becomes a monstrous person, right? He tolerates the murder of a child at one point, spoiler alert. But I think what really kind of distinguishes him as a troll, because troll seems to have that sense of a little bit of a supernatural edge, is that part where Jesse says, like, he can't keep getting away with this, right? Like he's so lucky. He's luckier than you. He's smarter than you. He's luckier than you. I think that we attribute better luck, certain powers of unearned fortune to evil, and that's kind of a supernatural bonus that they have. And I think that there's a big sense of that in troll. Now, in modern Scandinavian folklore, troll does come to have a more consistent meaning, right? It comes to have more of a sense of like a big humanoid thing, right? A giant ogre, if you want to use terms like that, which I don't like because they're pretty vague too. That's not there in Old Norse. Remember, trolls are both very humanoid things that Ketil sleeps with, as well as very monstrous things that he insults as being the ugliest humanoids he's ever seen. They're also wolves. They are also wizards, right? I mean, actually, part of that old sense of troll is preserved in, like, modern Norwegian trollmann, which means wizard, right? Dumbledore is a trollmann. From an Old Norse perspective, oddly enough, again, Frankenstein's monster, Godzilla, Bigfoot, Dumbledore, and Walter White, all trolls. And what they have in common is not that they're a specific creature or being. What they have in common is that they are not like us in a way that's a little negative, a little unnatural. The unnatural thing with magic being perhaps a little bit less negative, but it's still kind of like, I don't necessarily trust somebody who has that kind of unnatural power, right? That's still trollish. Now, for a slightly different perspective, I've got an interview that I did in 2018 with Ármann Jakobsson from the University of Iceland, where he talks about elf and troll as opposed terms. Elf being a supernatural creature that's below the gods but is good, and troll being a supernatural creature that is below the Jotuns, the equivalently high evil beings, but bad. That's a great interview that we did around Halloween season 8 years ago. Still on the channel, and you should check that out if you haven't. It's a really good perspective from a top scholar on Norse language and myth. Well, from beautiful Colorado, thanks as always, and I'm wishing you all the best.